Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
Hi, this is Steve, and here are some more of my gaming vexes. Hello and welcome to another episode of my Gaming Vexes, where we reflect on my ongoing efforts to run or at least play all of the tabletop role-playing games on my bookshelves, which are silently judging me as I sit here. Although most of the games we discuss are new, at least to me, it's inevitable that some games deserve to be revisited. There's a real joy in long-form games, where you can go back time after time and discover again why you loved it the last time around. The prime example for us is, of course, The One Ring. After a break, we've once more started another set of adventures, this time focused around the ruins of Fornost-Arain, or Norbury of the Kings to the common folk. This is a game that I know we'll continue to revisit over and over again. Go back to episode 41 if you want to hear why. Alongside this, we've also restarted our game of Forbidden Lands, picking up our run-through of the Raven's Purge campaign supplement. Totally enjoyable and unpredictable mayhem. Very different to The One Ring, of course, but equally as enjoyable. But as well as games you know you'll enjoy, there's also value in revisiting games that may not have hit the mark on their first run. In episode 48, we return to Modiphius' Star Trek Adventures, reflecting on the transition from 1E to 2E and our experiences over an extended series set in the Federation Klingon War. This time, we're going back to Savage Worlds. Back in episode 37, we discussed our thoughts about the Savage Worlds implementation of Palladian Games' frankly bonkers Rift setting. At the time, we weren't sold on either the core system or the vast complexity of the Rift setting, but as I said at the time, a lot of people seem to bloody love Savage Worlds, so perhaps I'd missed something that was staring me in the face. So, when I looked at realising a long-held ambition to run a game set in the world of Games Workshop's long-gone dark future game, I went back to Savage Worlds as a pulpy toolkit system that should give me everything I needed. In this episode, I'll start the ignition with a brief introduction to the setting, swerve through the dead man's curve of the game's publication history, before hitting the nitrous oxide as we reflect on our gaming experiences. Before we get to that though, we've had another 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. This one comes in from Dave, living the dream out in Australia. Dave says, "Wonderful rambles about all the joys of gaming. I only recently started listening to this podcast because previously I had misheard the title as All Our Exes Are Gaming Vexes, and that sounded pretty sexist. Now, I'm working my way through the back catalogue with gay abandon. Each episode I've heard is a discussion by GMs and players, reflecting on a game that they have played, where they sort through all the mechanics, narrative elements, and bits and bobs. This is my favourite kind of show about RPGs. Not a live play, not a review, but rather a shared reflection. The great strength is that everyone involved are not just steeped in RPGs, but pop culture more broadly, and seem like decent and interesting people. Thus the discussions are rich and relevant. A total joy." Thanks for that, Dave. All our exes are gaming vexes. I wonder how else we've inadvertently offended international listeners once received pronunciation English as taught has been made more vibrant by the selection of regional accents in our gaming group. To anyone else out there, if you like what we're doing, a positive review on your podcast listening platform of choice would be great. If you really like the podcast, we also have a Patreon and a Ko-fi, details of which you can find in the show notes. So, with that, it's time to start your engines and get ready. Listen up. If you're hearing this, you've likely just crossed the filter out of a police zone, or you're one of the scumsuckers born the wrong side of the wire. Either way, welcome to the real 1990s, dark future style. My name's Quinn Cannon, and I've spent 10 years in the reborn US Cavalry, pulling shifts at Fort Apache and running escort for Gentech motor wagons. People in the cities, in the PZs, they think the world ended back in the 60s. It didn't, it just got meaner. You want to know how the American dream turned into this chrome-plated nightmare? It didn't happen overnight. It started back in the October of '60. That's the year the Kennedy and Monroe scandal blew the hinges off the White House and handed the keys to Richard Nixon. Nixon's 60s weren't about peace and love. They were about orbital death rays that didn't work and watching the Chinese take Vietnam while we sat on our hands. Trusting the flag didn't just slip, it plummeted. By the time Barry Goldwater took over in '69, the rot was set. Then came Agnew, and then Heston. Yeah, the lousy actor himself. People laugh, but it was Heston who signed the NDB Amendment in '85. That was the kill shot for the old world. It gave private security firms more legal weight than a badge, and by the early 90s, the police didn't exist anymore. Just corporate mercenaries, sanctioned ops, hunting for a bounty under a flag that's mostly just a corporate logo now. Fast forward to today, January 1999. President Ollie North is in the big chair, but he's just a suit for the multinationals. Nixon's still alive, mostly, kept on a respirator and a prayer. If you're lucky enough to live in a PZ, life is all retinal scans and ZBC's Lola Stechkin skin flicks. Out here though, the law is whatever you can carry in a holster or load to a pintle mount. You've got corps like Gentek running the show from their ivory towers, hiring guys like me to keep the trade routes open. Then you've got the gang cults, the psychopomps, the Voodoo Brotherhood and others, predators who treat the interstate like their own private hunting ground. If you're driving a stock sedan without at least a pintle-mounted MG, you're not a traveller, you're a target. And then there's the Josephites out in Deseret, led by Elder Seth, waiting for the end of the world, or maybe just bringing it. Prime Minister Archer's England's still rationing, Yeltsin's still holding on to the USSR, and the wires are full of something we call the Demon Download, a digital plague that's turning people into things that don't belong in any history book. The preachers say the Dark Ones are coming through the wires. Looking at the state of the world, I'm starting to think the preachers are the only ones telling the truth. So, advice from a pro. Watch your back, keep your senses active, and never trust a ghost in a machine. In the dark future, the road doesn't go on forever. It just goes until you run out of ammo or luck. Stay safe, or at least, stay armed. In the late 1980s, Games Workshop game designer Mark Gascoigne was designing a post-apocalyptic role-playing game called Dark Future that was set in the United States. At the same time, Richard Halliwell was designing a miniatures vehicle combat board game using many of the rules he had developed for the Judge Dredd board game Slaughter Margin. When Gascoigne's role-playing game project was shelved, his post-apocalyptic setting in the United States was grafted onto Halliwell's vehicular combat game. The merger, featuring artwork by Tony Ackland, Dave Andrews, Carl Critchlow, Dave Gallagher, Mike McVeigh and a whole host of names familiar from the pages of White Dwarf in its glory days, was published by Games Workshop in 1988 as Dark Future. At the same time, Citadel Miniatures released a line of metal miniatures that could be used with the game and were a similar scale to model vehicles such as those manufactured by Matchbox. Sets of weapons packs were also available that could be stuck onto model cars, thus dark futurising them. In the game, players take on the roles of mercenaries called Sanctioned Operative or Ops, who are hired for a variety of missions on the unpoliced highways. Later that same year, Games Workshop also published a game expansion, White Line Fever, that featured more vehicles and weapons and more tactics. In 1990, Games Workshop published an anthology of Dark Future short stories titled Route 66, edited by David Pringle. This was followed by a number of Dark Future novels, including the Demon Download cycle by the author Kim Newman under his pen name Jack Yeovil. These novels took the setting in a completely different direction than that of the gaming products, bringing in themes reminiscent of Lovecraft's work, with powerful intelligences seeking to break through into reality. Also, although the game's setting was completely separate to the developing Warhammer and Warhammer 40k backgrounds, the books did make passing references to the Chaos Gods Khorne, Slaanesh, Nurgle and Tzeentch. If you want a more detailed discussion of these novels, I recommend listening to the GW Book Club podcast, which has episodes covering all of the published novels. I'll put a link in the show notes. Eventually, however, the game line was dropped in 1991 in favour of the much more lucrative and distinct Warhammer games. As a result, a planned follow-up expansion, Dead Man's Curve, was published as a series of articles in White Dwarf, rather than as a full release in GW stores. The game line finally crashed and burned in White Dwarf 125. First of all, while I'm pulling up the list of things we're going to chat about, do you want to say who you are, social handles, whatever it might be, and the character you played in our attempt at Dark Future Savage Worlds?
My name is David Patterson, or Genius. I was essentially hired assassin of the church. I was a very martial nun in this. You were.
Indeed.
Yeah, good.
All right. Thanks, Dave.
Well, hello. I am Neil, a.k.a. Old Scouse RP on Blue Sky and other social.
It always makes me laugh. I don't know why it just does. Old Scouts are RPing. It's just more childish.
Yeah. Well, it depends what you think RP is, to be honest with you.
Go on.
And I played Trooper Elias Vance, a road cavalry trooper who was like a boy's own kind of adventure hero, I guess, in theory at least.
Two-fisted,
if not in practice.
ace driver, all
Yeah.
that good stuff.
That's
All
the
right.
fella.
And Sam, how about you?
Yeah, I'm Sam Zero Veil on all the socials. Been on more of these podcasts than I can remember.
Nearly as many as I have.
I was playing a character called Kid Cassidy, who is a sort of all-round agent of the state.
Yeah, and an
That
expert
is
with
only
a
ever good at- yeah, expert with a chainsaw.
expert with a chainsaw. We'll get to that. I'm sure.
I could just about remember my character. It wasn't Captain Ahab. Doc Ishmael.
He was a cyber doc, essentially, wasn't he?
A cyber doc.
And got any socials you want to admit to in terms of Twitter, Blue Sky,
I'm
whatever?
just under my own name on Blue Sky. That's
Yeah,
fine, and
okay.
Keep it at that.
Thanks, Tristan.
So I suppose just a bit of an introduction, really. So I became aware of Dark Future because that came out just as I'd started working for Games Workshop. So I worked for Games Workshop from 1990 to 1991, and it was the big box game release at the time. It was completely different to everything else that had come out. It was 20mm scale. It wasn't Warhammer. Basically, it was that sort of Mad Max type setting. And I can remember sitting on the floor in, I think it was a chap called Tony Etworth's house, which I lived in up in Nottingham. He was the chief mould maker for Games Workshop, pushing these little plastic cars around this cardboard track and thinking, this is my best life. It doesn't get any better than this. And so
you were a virgin for a number of years, weren't you?
well, that's fine. We've all been there. Don't worry. And so Dark Future, and it was a time when they brought out the box game. They brought out a whole series of novels as well, which we'll touch on a little bit. It was all over White Dwarf for a while, and then it completely disappeared. They brought out the main box game, a supplement, another supplement, which was just published in White Dwarf, and then gone. That's it. So I suppose from your guys, had you got any awareness of Dark Future at all before I foisted it on you as a game setting?
My perspective, no, none at all. That was about the time I entered the deep freeze. So, it wasn't that it was sort of impenetrable. It was a dark future and was fairly easy to sort of pick up, I think. It seemed to be sort of fairly self-explanatory. I absolutely knew nothing about it whatsoever.
Okay. Anyone else?
Same here, really. I think I was aware of it in as much as... So my entry into the deep freeze was a little later than Dave's, maybe mid-90s. So I think I maybe had seen it. By this time, I was in my deepest hatred of anything Games Workshop, the company that had, as far as I knew, destroyed Games of Liverpool. I ignored a lot of this stuff, but I do remember the ads for it, and I don't think it would have appealed to me as that style of game. That wasn't really what I was into.
I was into all the bling.
Tristan?
Well, before Dark Future, there was Car Wars.
Mm-hmm.
My brother always brought over the latest stuff from the UK when we were living in Germany. So Car Wars was the real introduction. And then when Dark Future came out with all the Carl Critchlow artwork and the Les Edwards cover, it was an insta-buy. And I played it with younger brothers briefly. I don't think it ever got turned into a role-playing game as it said on the cover.
No, 3D role play, wasn't it?
It was converting Matchbox cars and making them.
That was half the fun. Sticking guns on Matchbox cars was great. That was all good fun.
Yeah. I've still got most of the guns for that, but I haven't converted any Matchbox cars yet.
Yeah.
Recently. I just couldn't see the mileage in it because...
The mileage.
If you look at the best of Mad Max, the best is when he's not talking.
That's true. What about you, Sam?
I was well aware of it at the time because it was plastered all over White Dwarf. But we played a lot of Car Wars up to that point and transitioned into Battletech. And so this sort of game didn't have much of an appeal to me. But the Mad Max world background was a big draw. And the artwork was also very attractive. And I actually got to play the game.
The artwork, but it was Carl Critchlow did a lot of the artwork for Inside, so the guy who was did Thrud, and also Paul Bonner did quite a bit of artwork for the novelizations as well. And so, as I say, you know, I fell for it hard because it was when I just started working in Games Workshop. The whole point was it scaled 20 mil, so you could buy Matchbox cars. GW sort of sold like little add-on weapons packs. You could then stick machine guns on the front of your Morris Minor that you'd bought or whatever. And as you say, Sam, it was basically Mad Max with a bit of cyberpunk thrown in. Although it suffered from the whole thing about, like, you know, there was no internet at all, you know, and mobile phones weren't thought of. So it's the whole thing about, you know, traveller computers just didn't really stack up.
The whole concept of doing Matchbox cars with add-ons just sounds like an absolute winner.
It was brilliant. And actually, I mean, is it Gaslands? I think it does a similar sort of thing, because obviously, you know, you can get those cars. But yeah, and so, you know, as I say, I've long harboured an ambition to run a game set in the world of Dark Future, more set on the novels, and we'll talk about that in a second, and just how disturbing some of the stuff was in the novels. Thinking about trying to find a system to be able to run something with it. Obviously needed something that was a bit of a toolkit, sort of generic. I did pick up, there's a set of rules called Devil's Run Role Playing, which was a Savage World setting and a Modiphius setting as well. It was quite similar, but quite crunchy, even crunchier than base Savage Worlds, really. But having my experience of Savage Rifts earlier on, and really, you know, my usual thing of, I'm going to get into a game system. What's the thing I'll do? I'll choose the most complicated, difficult way to access the game system from the outset. So Savage Rifts was like everything, everywhere, all at once. I realised that probably, you know, there must be something to Savage Worlds, and I just hadn't really got the sort of sense of it. So last year, 2025, was my year of Savage Worlds. So ran quite a few games at conventions, and obviously ran this series of Dark Future as well. So that's what we did. And also, what I wanted to do as well was to get every single bit at the Savage Worlds toolbox, throw it at the screen at my players, and see how they responded to it, see if I could make it work. So you guys, often the case, guinea pigs in that setting. So I suppose, I mean, we'll cover all sorts of stuff really, but what I wanted to do was go back over the points that came up when we were talking about Savage Worlds Rifts previously. One of the things that came out was about the core mechanic. It's very swingy, you know, dice explode, huge amounts of damage can be done, possibly at the time when you don't want it to be done, but it can happen. So just over to you guys, really. I mean, you know, Savage Worlds, we've all played quite a bit of it now. What do you think of that core mechanic? Like it, hate it, in the middle somewhere?
It depends.
Well, it takes a while to grok the idea that all the dice can change completely in a few moments.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
I couldn't make sense of the dice rolling system to begin with. I can understand it now, and I think it's probably good for generating more dramatic outcomes in a combat.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the swinginess is quite hard to get used to.
Yeah. Do you like the swinginess, or is that a bug, not a feature?
I'd probably like it more if I was more familiar with it, because I didn't really understand how all the rolls would stack up. It's pretty difficult to calculate odds and stuff on things. It's not like you can see the percentage and roll for it.
If you're relying on dice to explode, to do damage to the opposition or similar, then no, it's a horrible system. But I mean, the chance of it happening isn't huge, is it? 1 in 6.
Yeah, so like the core mechanic is you basically roll your skill die, whatever it is, D4 up to a D12.
So we were sometimes having to rely on exploding dice to do damage to any opposition, which was really hard work.
Yeah.
Didn't enjoy that at all.
I loved it.
Yeah. I know we talked about this before, and I'm trying desperately not to repeat myself, which...
Look, repeat
why
away.
should I start now? Why should I start now? I think with Savage Worlds, I think as really to sort of amplify Sam's point, Savage Worlds being a modular system benefits from you deciding what you aren't going to use. Biggest problem is with the dice rolling mechanic and everything else, it doesn't favour the players necessarily. I think the issue with, as you quite rightly said, if you come across somebody who is even remotely well-powered or with equal standing, that reliance on being able to do better than them over a sustained period of time is almost impossible. The flip side of that is if everyone's a mook, it's just too easy. There isn't any joy in having exploding dice. So I think as a GM, it probably puts far more pressure on you to balance encounters, not just in terms of, whether we're going up against a similar level of complexity or hardship, but also balancing the idea of success, but success is at a cost, as opposed to stalemate or getting your ass handed to you on a plate, which we probably had on more than one occasion. And I think the brilliant thing about Savage Worlds is, I think the character creation system allows you to create exactly what you had in your mind within certain boundaries, but kind of gets you where you want to go. I think the big problem with Savage Worlds is getting a balance of encounters where it's achievable, but definitely achievable if you get exploding dice, or it's a stalemate, or it's really stacked against you.
I think you're right, Dave. And for me, I've sort of increasingly come to the view that it's like a game of two halves. And actually, it's two halves that probably don't sit that well together. So the combat system we'll talk about, and this combat system and everything else. Because I think what you're talking about is that sort of ability, trying to balance combat encounters. You can't really. In fact, the rules don't really have a mechanism to be able to balance things, which is good in some ways. And actually, the sort of combat encounters where you're up against, because a lot of your opponents are actually mirror images of you. Not you personally, but your characters, because to try and balance it that way.
What I was doing was copying the stats of your characters and basically reskinning them. So to try and at least balance it out, because essentially they were the same as you were.
But as you say, it's quite hard. Sorry, Neil, I know you're going to jump in.
I agree with everything that's been said so far. When I came out of the deep freeze in 2016, or thereabouts, I bought Savage Worlds. I read it and it just kind of baffled me, really. It just felt like it fast, furious fun, but then it's actually slow, fiddly, unfun, really. I think, I've enjoyed playing it, and I've had some good times in one shots, and we did have some good times playing this. But I don't think it's particularly intuitive. Like I think the core mechanics are relatively straightforward, but the minute you start adding other stuff on, I was just getting lost all the time. And with like the wound system, stun once, stun twice. If I've got a wound, no, I've not. Spend a penny. You just like, bloody hell. Just tell me how many hit points I've lost.
What's wrong with a hit point?
And I just struggle with it. And going back to my, when I first bought Savage Worlds, I gave that away for free because I thought I will never, ever run this. And yet I think it's a game, it promises so much. It promises loads, got great settings, really good support. I think it's a game that you need everybody who's playing it to really invest in it.
Did you buy a copy at Expo as well?
I did, yeah. That's been sitting on my shelf, gathered in dust. And unread ever since. I only bought it because it was heavily discounted.
So a game you'd already given away for free, then bought for a second time.
Yeah, well, not strictly. So that the one I gave away was the Explorer edition. So
this is a new one.
I had some hope that things might have been improved.
Proper Pinnacle fanboy, aren't you?
Yeah, that's me.
You should see how much stuff I've got on my shelf here. I've got practically a whole shelf full of Savage World stuff.
Neil is absolutely correct with that. The combat pacing, I found some of that was so slow. All the bits and pieces we were having to add and delete.
I thought the best results were when we got wildly unexpected outcomes in combat. So we went in and it looked like things were getting really bleak and everyone was about to get killed. And then suddenly someone got all aces on their rolls and we managed to top the boss. That was about the best thing that could happen. That's quite dramatic, and I don't think that's really possible with a less swingy system.
Yeah, but you can't rely on that, can you?
It's pretty miserable when the dice rolls are not going in your favour.
I think this is the core of it, really, because again, I mean, we've said before, it's from a miniatures game. That's where you got a lot of sort of pluses, minuses. And if you've got somebody who is really au fait with the rules, like, I can do multiple actions and they've got modifiers, you can work it out. So I think I'm pretty au fait with it, so I can do a lot of that stuff. When we were doing combats, like tactical combats on grids and whatever, I was going, you could do this, you could try that, and you're going, I'm just going to roll to hit, because that's essentially that's what you want to do. And I think what that means is, I think what you've got is a combat system which is really slow and is basically a miniatures game. We'll talk a little bit about the experience with the Gladiator. Me and Doc and we drove Chris insane with our manipulation. Well, my manipulation of the rules in the Gladiator thing. I think that, to your point, Neil, if you take Savage Worlds, just take the tactical combat bit out, okay, and you take the other elements. So, for example, things like quick encounters, which you did quite a lot of that sort of stuff as well. Then it becomes much more. It gets over the complexity. And it also gets over the, plus minus this, all this sort of stuff going on. It doesn't get over the wound issue, but it means that you're able to, it actually moves a lot more quickly. Whereas if you say, actually, I just want to do a miniatures game, then you could run Savage Worlds quite easily with that. So I think it's got a bit of a split personality. Can I say that, as far as the game goes?
See, I wonder, funny enough, I've never done it. But I wonder if you played the combat sessions with 2 GMs, because you're having to, if not everyone is mooks and, dispensable, and you've got 2 or 3 that are similar to player characters, named characters, are they?
Mm-hmm.
Wild
cards, yeah.
Wild card, yeah. So if you had somebody else there to sort of take over the rolling of the other NPC wild cards, that might make the combat a bit different and more fluid, because it's just a bookkeeping exercise.
Yeah, I get you completely.
The GM. While we were the great sort of denouement fighting against all the various factions and different styles, including the robots and the NPCs, it then just became that was like a. I don't know. That seemed to go on. It went on for at least 2 sessions.
It was only 1 session, and it just seemed like longer.
It
felt like 10. That's the point.
The worst bit is, it gets to a stage where you just go, okay, well, I'm not going to spend a penny. You've killed him. And then you feel a bit cheated by the experience, possibly. I don't know.
I was getting the impression that Savage Worlds is supposed to be a tabletop war game anyway.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the bookkeeping, we'll come to Foundry in a second. Yes, you could have multiple GMs. You could try and spread the load that way. I didn't feel that bad from my perspective. Certainly not as bad as something like RuneQuest, for example, which is, an awful lot more going on in it. But it still wouldn't get to the core problem of it's just a lot of load for players to take on. And actually, it's even when it gets around to your turn, it's like, well, I've got all these options. I don't really know what to choose from. I'll just move and hit them or shoot. There are lots of options in there. It doesn't just reward system mastery. It almost requires it. And I think any game that's got that it's got some issues. But anyway, so yeah, combat. Fast, furious, F off. That's what Doc called it in the end. Right, let's just move on a little bit. I just want to touch on Foundry first. Foundry's got a good Savage Worlds implementation. Fantasy Grounds got a good implementation as well. When we play the One Ring, do we ever really question the rolls when they come out? Generally, we might go, I'm not sure if I've got not enough dice in there, but we don't often question the results that pop up in the dice tray. The Savage Worlds forever looking, going, is that right? Has that beat the wound level? Is that actually, and actually it's relatively straightforward calculation. It's, it's not impossible to find, does it? But I found in every time I've played it, we ended up questioning, is that right? It's almost like we didn't trust the system.
There was a lot of debate around certain things, and I'll be completely honest, like when anything was attacking me, I'd just be like, just tell me what happened. There's no way I'm going to work out from what I can see whether it's stunned me or wounded me or whatever. And then somebody has to remind me again, well, if you do a what's-its-name roll, you can undo
a vigor roll.
That frustrated the hell out of me as well, because there were times where you do a really good shot or attack on somebody. Yeah, this is great. Oh, they made a vigor roll. It's all gone. And you're thinking, the point of that? I just don't think it's intuitive. I just don't get it. I just don't get it.
No, you get it completely.
Generally on these podcasts, we're praising the amount of heavy lifting that Foundry does in all these systems. It's saying how great it was and how fast it was. But here, I think, I don't know if it's because you're adding so many modules to it, or as if you're.
I actually took loads out and reduced them, just so all we saw was the dice roll. I kept saying, don't worry about it, we'll work it out.
The problem is there were so many buttons to turn on and off. You're equipped with this weapon, are you injured? And then you've got to target your opposition accurately. We did question it a lot, but it was always right. But it's just so much implementation to work out and try to get your head around, to click all these things on and off and then attack with the right weapon. Oh, you're not strong enough to be carrying this weapon. Oh,
you can't pick up that chainsaw. You're not strong enough.
I think my only issue with it is, I think it's a bit like, how can I possibly get through a podcast without mentioning it? It's a bit like getting a critical hit table. That's the exciting bit, isn't it? That's the bit where everyone goes, yay! And then tries to work. Whereas, oh, look, I've had exploding dice. Right. Oh, look, it's exploded again. Oh, that's fantastic. Well done. That's the performative bit.
I think that was a point that was made when we played Earthdawn, not on Foundry, ages ago, which is another exploding dice mechanic. That way back. And I think, as Doc says, actually, that's one of those games that's better around a table. Because you're seeing the dice explode and there's a bit more of excitement around it. I mean, I think it's difficult for the GM to balance combats because if you're doing the full fat combat approach, it's quite hard. Sam's character, I'd set up this super hard assassin to take you guys on and then was going to lead you on a merry foot chase through the streets of Chicago. And what did your character do, Sam?
I exploded a few times on the damage roll, didn't I?
Yeah, with your chainsaw. And basically did like 44 damage. Yeah. And we ended up with a chase sequence afterwards where you were having to slow down so that the enemy could catch up because it was so badly damaged. It's difficult to set a set piece. This is often the case with it's always the case with exploding systems. And MERP again, open-ended rolls. You can never rely that your big bad is going to survive long enough to be a credible threat. But, I'm not bitter. It's fine. Okay, right. So we're going to take a break from talking about the system stuff. We've talked a little bit about the setting of Dark Future. What did you think about the world? I based the scenario, the series, around the first novel. So Demon Download, written by, Jackie Oval was the name on the cover, but it was Kim Newman who actually wrote the novels. And I threw a lot of scenes and characters. For example, Chantal, your character Dave, was a character in the book, as was Trooper Vance. Yours wasn't, Sam. Kid Cassidy was not a character, but even so, Doc's character was a preacher. What did you think of the world? How did it come across? Because I don't think you believed that it was actually, you thought I'd made it all up and was having a bit of an episode.
It was just like Mega City 1 without judges, really, wasn't it? I think it had that craziness to it. The corporations having absolute power, the government, no central government as such, and just lots of chaos everywhere. I thought it was really interesting world. I think, as you said, when it was written, there's no internet, no smartphones, and that can make things feel very dated. And it did to a degree, but I thought like the style of it and some of the art, like the pieces of art you showed us, you could see it. That could just be straight out of 2000 AD. Mega City 1, you could say it maybe would have been something you'd have seen. It would have worked as a 2000 AD strip, maybe. I like the setting. I'll definitely do more in the setting.
Yeah, it's good fun. Good, because there's another two novels.
Good. So we'll be playing the MERP version.
Yeah, why not? Cyberspace.
I think the setting's really good. I liked, the way it was sort of positioned was sort of Mad Max, but slightly more gritty, if such a thing is possible. I think the factions and that there were different competing factions that we were all representing made it a little bit more complex than you're looking for food or something like that. So I thought that was it. I thought it was good. And I really enjoyed it. I quite like the idea of being a leather-clad nun as well. But that's a hobby rather than
of its time. I think as well, because in the core game, the box game, it's very much about driving or riding on motorbikes and shooting stuff. Whereas in the book, they bring through almost like a Cthulhu type setting where you've got these great old ones from the Outer Darkness trying to force up with their way through into the into this world. And so the whole thing was about this the Path of Joseph, who were like this sect of fairly disturbed Christians out in Utah. No parallels there. And who basically had got this trying to summon this demon and trying to get it into the network to smash stuff up, that's nowhere in the miniatures game.
Well, I thought the fusion of magic and science was quite good as well. That was quite an interesting way to take it. I quite enjoyed that bit.
Yeah.
Investigative bit around that.
I can imagine that the guys at Games Workshop, perhaps their focus on IP being consistent was far less the case in 1990. You can imagine reading and going, this is nothing like the game, but we've commissioned it now. We've got to publish it. But anyway, what about you, Sam? Any thoughts?
No, I love the background itself. I did find it slightly confusing with all the different factions coming together and who's opposing against who. Could have done it with a little primer just to show who was friendly with who wasn't, who was antagonistic. That would have been quite useful. But no, the whole thing that we did, with the artwork you were showing, it made it really evocative. Oh, that's mental, especially the travelling preacher machine thing.
Yeah, I think the Robo Preacher guy with the tank, that was probably the one that I found most incredible.
So when you were driving through the desert, because everything's desert, you ran across that. It was like a tank with like a torso, like a robotic torso. And inside the torso was the brain of a evangelical preacher who'd been found out to be less than saintly. He'd been put into this tank and given the mission of raising $6 billion to expiate his sins. I had great fun sort of role-playing him.
That has horrific echoes of what's happening now in certain parts of the...
Who could say?
Anyway.
Reverend Harry Powell, wasn't it?
Reverend Harry Powell, that's right. It was definitely good fun. I was going, honest, it's in the source material. I didn't just make it up. All right, so we've talked about Savage Worlds itself, so challenges there. We'll talk about some of the subsystems I threw at you, and it's sort of was obviously trying to, first of all, to kick the tires on Savage Worlds, but also to sort of create something that would fit this sort of dark future setting. And so I'm just going to sort of go through them and just get your thoughts on, what it was like as a player. So I suppose the first thing is, obviously, it's a vehicle-based game. We did quite a lot of chases and vehicles and stuff. Any thoughts about that? Because we use this sort of abstract system where you deal out playing cards. Vehicles are moving from card to card. It's like a very abstract chase system. And I think chase systems are one things that often games struggle with, Call of Cthulhu being one of them. But what was it like from your perspective? Did it make sense? Was it fun? Was it just, like the rest of the... Was it boring?
bored me senseless.
Really?
Yeah.
Didn't make much difference to me.
Yeah? Okay.
Pointless. It was basically...
I think there were enjoyable moments, but why? I mean, I suppose chases in RPGs just never work. Why is there this fixation? We've got to have chase mechanics. Why? Just like if you need to resolve it, just roll a couple of dice and get it over and done. What I mean? And get onto the interesting bit, which is moments of maybe intense conflict. There was good bits like where Cassidy jumped onto the truck in that first one, and
why? Because I was bored with what's going on.
Wasn't moving quickly enough for you.
It was just like positioning your car in front. Well, I'm going to try and ram them. Oh, it's not really going to work. They're big. Okay, I'll try and do this. No, it's not going to work. I'll try and do that. Oh, it's not going to work. And you try and think of cool things you can do, and again, maybe lack of Savage Worlds knowledge or the options available, but I just
imagination, Neil. That's what it is.
Yeah, maybe. I think I'm going to ask future games that anybody would you like to play in. I'm just going to ask them, do they have any chases in?
So a single roll to resolve it. Do you catch them or not?
That has to be that simple. Because it wasn't just a chase, was it? It was a combat that was a moving combat.
We were afraid to do a lot of things because of the consequences of doing something that resulted in a potential skid, losing control of your vehicle and things like that.
The stakes are pretty low, though. I mean, I don't think you were ever under any real pressure in any of the, and again, this is about balancing games and, trying to sort of opposition and stuff. But I get you completely.
I thought the chase mechanics were pretty good. They certainly work better than most of the ones I've tried previously. I think they were really helped by the maps that you had. They were always really good background for chase bit. Yeah, we had good, colourful opponents. Yeah, I thought they worked well. They were always quite dramatic and could have gone either way.
What about you, Dave?
I've got a horrible feeling that I'm still childishly excited by games of Snap. So drawing cards, if my card's bigger than yours, or even the same, it's fantastic. I rather like things like that. I have a feeling that probably says more about me. And
embrace your inner child. That's what it's all about.
I don't really think I've come across a game that does chases very well. But I think most players anticipate they're going to succeed at the chase. And if you instead sort of think, well, I could lose, a little bit easier to deal with the consequences of playing through the chase. I think there's an anticipation that if you're chasing someone, you're going to succeed.
Going to catch them.
So if we were in a storytelling environment, you just go, oh, well, you chased him down. I don't think anybody really does it very well. And I'd suggest possibly the way to resolve this might be by slipping into something like Car Wars mechanics, where it relies on the various vehicle strengths rather than a random sort of die rolls. I don't know.
The vehicles are
complicated.
The vehicles are differently set up, but I'm just reflecting. So it feels like it pulls on the downsides of combat without any of the upsides, really. So it's the worst of all possible worlds, mainly. The next bit I'm going to come to is talking about like dramatic tasks, which essentially is skill challenges, basically. That's not unique to Savage Wars, obviously. Okay. But I think, for example, chases, you could do that as a dramatic task quite easily, couldn't you? Because it's just, did you get any successes? It's just a few rolls. You can be a bit more narrative about it. You're not actually worried about placement on the table. Obviously, you need to have, if you don't catch them, what's the consequence that doesn't stop the story? But
and what you want from a good chase is the same as from a good combat, isn't it? There needs to be jeopardy. There needs to be action. There needs to be consequences, not just for you, but for the NPCs as well. So finding a way of dramatizing things, then fantastic. If you're going to go for a skill challenge at the beginning or a, I don't know, whatever sort of mechanic you might use.
You might use a clock, for example, for something like this. That's what I think.
Maybe not.
One of the, I was just thinking about chases, like when you see them on TV, right? And they can be really exciting. The one defining thing about all chases, right, is that they are fast, things going on. And I think it's just really difficult to recreate that in any meaningful way. So when things feel slow and you're kind of like, okay, well, I've moved to 100 yards.
One card forward.
From like 20 minutes ago, where it was last night, do you know what I mean? It just doesn't have that sense of momentum.
No, completely.
I just think if you want to have a chase, great, but set yourself a time limit. Like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then work backwards from there. What is it I want to get out of this? Is it a chase that actually adds anything to the game? Do the characters learn anything through this chase? Is it just threat? Like, is it effectively like a combat? In which case you just do it as a combat. So I don't know. I just think there's probably different ways of handling it.
Well, effectively, so the chase mechanics as they are in Savage Wars are a form of combat. I mean, there's a science fiction companion which has something called, I didn't actually manage to inflict this on you, but there's something called the clash mechanic, which is basically, it's like you roll in so many successes you get and you can spend those successes on doing damage and stuff. But again, it's very abstract, a little bit more jeopardy to it. But again, that would sort of take the whole card. It's almost like a version of a dramatic task, really, but it's focused on combat.
I mean, for me, a role-playing game is about the character I'm playing, not necessarily about the vehicle or the spaceship they're in, stuff like that. So I know when we've done the expansion, stuff like that, and you get into combats with that, stuff like that just doesn't grab me at all. And again, that's a me problem, I guess, as much as anything else. But
it's not a problem. It's just a preference, and these are games at the end of the day. So if you want to play games you like,
if I want to play a space combat game, I go and play Starfleet or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't play that because I don't want
We don't like it.
Yeah.
When you have a chase, though, you do go from that individual focus to the group thing. It's particularly with this, because we had 2 cars. We were usually chasing 1 or 2 vehicles in the cars, and it's sort of like you do become more of a group-minded thing, which then has everybody inputting on it. Shouldn't you do this? Won't you do that? Brian, it's like, well, it's not really why we're maybe bad. I don't know. I think the issue is tough mechanics all round.
Yeah, I got you. We did try another attempt, which Foundry let us down on. Well, there were 2 issues. This goes back to the assassin who got absolutely mullered by Sam early on, and therefore really wasn't in any state. Should have just rolled over and died, but I'd come up with a bit of a C anyway. This is me as a GM. I'd got a plan. I was sticking to it, regardless of the fun.
It's only a flesh wound.
It's only a flesh wound, yeah. But there was the quick chase deck, which is like the card setup. And again, I mean, did you manage to get much of a sense of that, or did you get a bit lost because the technology let us down? Got a bit lost. It's fair enough if you did. So,
anyone?
No, obviously, it made no impact.
Again, I like drawing cards. I just think that's good fun. But it's a bit.
I think that was
too random, maybe.
I think that was a bit more interesting because you had a few cards that you had to decide which ones you wanted to play. I thought that was a little bit more interesting. I prefer that.
It's like another sub game, which again is probably something that if technology worked, it would on Foundry fine, but it would definitely have been much better around the table, and it's much quicker. So you're not moving from card to card. But again, it's almost like, okay, we've moved from this one mechanic to a different mechanic, and I think there's so much. Well, it's almost like code switching that you have to do to go from one thing to the next. I mean, as gamers, we are simple souls, and we like a core mechanic that is pretty much applicable across the board.
I also think we're coming to a dreadful conclusion, which is that we prefer doing this round a table.
I think this game particularly, so when I ran it in person, even with Savage Rifts, it worked a lot. It didn't work better. It was just a different experience. We've talked about dramatic tasks, quick encounters. Essentially, it's a quicker way of a few rolls to resolve a combat, and then you take some wounds if you don't roll very well. It's about getting through it quite quickly. Chris, previously on the Grognard Files, he's talked about actually he's just run entire series not doing any combat at all, but just sort of sticking to quick encounters to get through it. Sam, you mentioned something about bennies. One of the setting rules in this. Yeah. So in standard Savage Worlds, you get 3 bennies 4 bennies is the GM, and the players get 3 bennies each. In Hard Choices, the GM starts with no bennies and only gets them when the players use them. So what do you think? What was your thoughts?
Gets them. Absolutely rubbish system for this particular game. For you as a GM, bear with me. You have this penchant for using skill chains and building up skills against the clock. Where you don't have to make any rolls, but as the players, we have to make continuous rolls all the time.
That's great.
We got down to the final encounter. We had about 2 bennies, 1 benny each, and you had 12 bennies because you hadn't had to do any rolling.
Do you know what? It never occurred to me, but I think that's an absolute benefit in this situation.
And you were using these bennies on characters that weren't wild cards.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is against the rules in Hard Choices.
Shocking.
Is it?
Shocking behaviour.
Is it against you should. All I knew is my sub GM to pull me up on these things, Sam. So I think I point my failing at you. I was given inappropriate advice by the Cabinet Office on the use of my bennies.
Rubbish to do at the beginning. Anyway, it didn't work for this particular game and this particular GM. But I'm not going to say it's not going to work for every other game.
Yeah, no, I get it completely. Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So we talked about combat. I just wanted to sort of a bit of a mea culpa, really, apart from what Sam said about me using the bennies wrong. So I don't play very often, but I did play in Dirk's Gladiator Forum thing. Yeah. As a player, all right, so it was set up, so it was very much based around the combat rules. So I used to do an awful lot of wargaming, almost like competitive wargaming. So going out, basically trying to beat the opposition. When I got back to role playing, it was such a relief, just a release to actually it's not about winning anymore. And this is the thing about the Savage Worlds combat system. It unleashed this competitive, horrible beast within me. Chris, if you're listening, feel free to delve into the horror that me and Doc put you through in that Gladiator thing. But it was so weird because the combat system was it was so reminiscent of a miniature-based system. It just brought that whole competitive thing out in me. So, yeah, I think I need to put that back in the box, actually, from this point on. So,
dark side of Steve.
The dark side of Steve, indeed. Absolutely, indeed.
So, sorry, can I ask a question?
Go for it.
If you weren't going to use Savage Worlds to do this, what gaming system would you have used?
Do you know what? I don't know. I think it would need to be something that was quite pulpy, because the characters are quite resilient.
Space Master, perhaps?
You could use... Well, I've got Cyberspace here. Could use that one, maybe? I don't know.
Champions?
Oh, God, no. I've never actually even played Champions. You guys have played a lot of games and run a lot of games. Have you got any thoughts about what system you would use?
What about the Barbarians of Lemuria?
Yeah.
Alternative, because I think that's got some kind of futuristic...
It does, yeah.
Everyone does add a few bits onto Barbarians of Lemuria that I'm not sure are necessary, but you could do that. I think there's a Foundry system for it and how good it is. But I think that would be one I'd be looking at.
Messing around with something like Coriolis.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, because I think one of the things with Coriolis is I think it shows that you can build flavour and the system doesn't get in the way of it.
So you're thinking about the Year Zero engine, which I know is Sam's favourite engine of all engines, isn't it, Sam?
Not too bad.
We could put a couple of skill clocks in there.
You can get skill clocks in every game, Dave. Don't worry about it.
If I was going to run this, I would run it using Dark Heresy.
Do you reckon? Ooh, wow, that's quite crunchy. Yeah. Percentile-based system. But
yeah, it's like Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd Edition sci-fi version. I'd use that.
There's a new version, isn't there? Imperium Maledictum, which I think is the similar setup. It's a percentile-based skill system, so it's almost like the successor to Dark Heresy, as I understand it. Listen, guys, we're running out of time. So, I mean, I suppose the question is, was the World of Dark Future enough? Let's leave the rule system to one side. Was the World of Dark Future enough to draw you in to play through the second book, which is called, what's it called? Comeback Tour. In this world, Elvis Presley didn't become a rock star. He went to Vietnam and became a sanctioned operative. You will be meeting the alternate version of Elvis Presley as a sanctioned op in the mean deserts of 1999. Is that enough to tempt you back in with a different rule set?
Absolutely.
I'd shift in that.
But does it start down at the end of Lonely Street?
It will now. We will do now, Dave.
As long as there's no car chases in it.
All right. Okay. So, as ever, thanks for playing, guys. You sort of helped me realise a dream. Running in the World of Dark Future. Kick the tyres, literally, on Savage Worlds.
Yep.
So, thanks. All right, Doc, you're hopeless. See you soon.
Let's go.
Cheers. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to another exploration of my gaming vexes. If you've got any thoughts you'd like to add to what you've heard here, or a gaming vex of your own you'd like to offer up for discussion, you can get in touch with me on Blue Sky via orlanth.bsky.social or via Discord at orlanth.vex. Until next time, may all of your games be free of vexatiousness and be excellent to each other always.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.